Hello, everybody. Why,
Hello.
why did you make that sound literally at the very start of the recording? What is wrong with
I
you?
said hi.
You said hi in like the weirdest way possible.
Yeah, well,
Anyway, yeah, hello everyone who was eagerly listening, like waiting for us to get back to recapping Darling in the Franxx. Um, this is not that. This is we've decided to talk about a contemporary show that's really mediocre instead.
oh boy.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
anyway,
just a
we should introduce
very
ourselves in
yes,
case.
yeah.
Just in case.
My name is Jean Michelle Alman,
I'm Julian Mallerman.
and this is something. We decided to do this more or less spontaneously. We do not have even like a name for this yet, but we had the idea that maybe we could get into the habit of doing just short little mini podcasts, I guess, about like
Yeah.
whatever we've been watching weekly in anime. And today we're talking about Liar Liar, which is a show that is airing this season and is better than a lot of what's airing, but that's a very low bar, and that should not be taken
Uh,
to mean that the show is
so
actually good.
maybe we should just start laying the groundwork by explaining that this season of anime there are some really good shows, including some unexpectedly very good shows. But the majority of what is coming out is wildly terrible.
I would say that between this season and the winter season, spring season was pretty strong. Between this and winter season, this is shaping up to be like one of the weakest years in anime that I've ever been paying attention for. Um, a lot of this stuff, and like just to name some names, like Tiny Senpai, Dreaming Boy is a realist, a couple other things. A lot of this stuff is just like not coherent television. Like
Yeah.
it is just very bad and very obviously bad in like production bubble at its absolute worst kind of way. And that's
Yeah.
not wholly untrue of Liar Liar, but Liar Liar has a little bit more going on than that, which is why we're
Y-
deigning to even talk about it.
yeah. The frustration of Liar Liar, as we were sort of hashing out as we were watching this episode, is that it feels like it is taking what is probably very entertainingly trashy source material and just
Yeah.
not doing it any favors. And that's frustrating because it's
Yeah.
there's just so much zany bullshit that you could have real fun with if you adapted it creatively. But it feels very flat in its presentation.
Yeah. This
Like it,
is it just to
yeah.
kind of provide a frame of reference. This is a show by Geek Toys, who are a studio that are also doing the Dead Mount Death Play anime this year, and that I thought it was actually like one of the unexpected, like pleasant surprises of last season. This is. I don't know, like, we kind of idly speculated that maybe the reason this doesn't look very good is because most of their people are still working on that, because that's got a second season core, whatever, coming out in a
Yeah.
couple months. But this is just like I mean the Dead Mount Death Play anime itself is mostly good, like sort of in spite of its production, and this just
Yeah.
is not.
The thing about Dead Mount Death Plays, it feels like a sort of production wise middling thing from the 2000s, but in a way that's kind of nostalgic, and it just happens to have really good comedic
Yeah.
timing, really good writing, reasonably strong character
Yes.
design, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's it is a decent adaptation of very strong source material,
Yeah.
whereas this is
Is a
taking
pretty
yeah.
mediocre adaptation of source material that, just going by like what we've seen so far in the anime, is probably decent in like a schlocky way.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
It's this would be a lot of fun if it felt like the animators were having any
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It's it. There's just to explain the basic premise very quickly. The game is set, the show. I've kind of given the game away there. The show is set on an island that is administered by this academy. Is essentially the premise is this is one of those like game battle shows like Kakegurui or something, where
No Game No Life, that sort of thing.
I haven't seen that one, but yeah, apparently that's sort of a similar thing. The whole premise is just like, there's these characters who are engaging in these game battles to, earn societal status and stuff, and there's a little bit more going on in terms of the plot, but that's the general idea. Our lead Hiroto, whose name I had to look up just now because I honestly couldn't remember it, is a complete nothing of a character, obviously. Not helped by a fairly lackluster performance from Genta Nakamura, but, that's kind of almost expected of this genre. Bless you. Not this genre, this medium. Sorry, this is a light novel adaptation, I should mention.
Ooh, yeah, like, it feels like a light novel adaptation.
It really does, and honestly, I kind of feel like I would have more fun reading the book. But
yes,
just to like dive right into the fundamental problem. For shows like this, like game battle stuff, or going back a little farther to like like trading card game anime, which is kind of one of the ancestors of this genre, along with stuff like kaiji and whatnot.
Like as you said, like the gambling anime subgenre, which is like its own thing, but has some overlap. Like Kakegurui draws more heavily on that, for example. But also, it's like crossbred with training card. Words. With like card battler anime, which are a whole own thing, like Card Fight Vanguard, Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
Just that whole. And Card Fight Vanguard has a new season out, by the way.
It does. So, like, I know someone who's watching that, and apparently it's like solid if you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, like it looked visually impressive, if nothing else.
Can I just say I love that you named Card Fight Vanguard before Yu-Gi-Oh?
But it's like, because Card Fight Vanguard is like still an ongoing thing.
So is Yu-Gi-Oh!
Actually, you're right.
Yeah, no.
How many seasons in is Yu-Gi-Oh at this point?
A lot. Look, that's a different and honestly much more interesting topic than what we're here to talk about today.
Oh my
God.
We
have to continue talking about mid.
And it connects back to one of our previous podcasts because of fucking Speed Grapher.
We don't need to talk about Speed Grapher.
We don't talk about Speed Grapher.
This show actually has a different connection to another really bad anime that we've both seen. We can get into that later.
Oh no.
Just sort of the fundamental problem is, like, with those shows, there is always at least like a loose sense of continuity of the games themselves. Like, you have at least some idea of how they work, even if it's like, like the really early seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they were kind of also just making shit up. There's at least, like, a vague logical relation between the interactions between the characters and the actual games themselves. This show doesn't really have that. A lot of the episode that we watched last week, where the game that Hiroto had to compete in was a race, like just like a foot race. And that one, like, the tone of the show, they encourage these characters to, like, basically openly flaunt the rules, which is not inherently a problem. And it can be entertaining, as in that episode where there is stuff like Hiroto's opponent, instead of, like, racing on foot, has, like, a big motorcycle. Like, that's kind of, there's a relation there between what's trying to be done and the way that his opponent chooses to, like, fuck with the rules. Does that make sense?
Yes. Like, there is just, like, there's a logical through line of, I can't directly compete with this particular skill, so I'm going to use this, this, and this. But really, he's only using one thing. But the way that it's kind of clever, and like it also goes in keeping with like how there's like the sort of exposition dialogue scene in that episode is shot in a fairly interesting way that is like very
just to
knock off Monogatari.
Just basically. That is very true. But just to finish the previous thought, like
yeah,
what he ends up doing, refresh me on the specifics. He like he sabotages her bike and then he just like leisurely walks to the finish line. I think.
Yeah, but what he
something
really,
like that.
But what he really did was essentially like just put all like what he personally actually did was put all of his things into, I think, nullifying, certain like
I wasn't gonna get.
He had his hacker friend do the other three things.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna get that far into it, but there is this whole system of like every character in the show has like a number of like skills in like sort of a loose like mobile gamey sense that lets them subvert the rules of these individual games. It gets really complicated really quickly.
Yeah,
which is another part of the problem. I think
that's the big part of like what it owes to card game shows.
Yeah, like, there's a whole lot of stuff that is, I activate the pot of greed to draw 2 additional cards in my deck.
But like part of the problem is that like, and like we were both talking about this, is like that the way that aspect is presented is it's Calvin Ball.
Yeah.
Like it feels like 2 kids on the playground being like, well, now the ground is lava.
Yeah, it's very Calvin Ball-y. Yeah, which, as you yourself said, that's a thing that happens with like a certain kind of shonen, and it's a lot more tolerable there because then there's the aspect of like the characters themselves feel that way.
Like, I feel like this person is a fan of Yoshihiro Togashi partly because the presenter character who is recurring character, she is basically like just the cat girl presenter from that one arc in Yu Yu Hakusho. So I think that maybe there's some of that going on, but like in something like Hunter x Hunter, the Calvin Ball aspect is something that the characters directly address and deal with in the thing.
Yeah.
And there's all this strategizing about how to figure out what another person is doing. Mm-hmm. That makes it engaging. And also some of it is just, again, it's like the whole, it's mind games, right?
Yeah.
Like, same thing with like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which really leans into the weird powers stuff, like in the later sort of parts of the series. But again, it's all about kind of like, how do I react to this? How do I get around this?
Yeah.
Etc.
Whereas in this show, a lot of that element is just kind of off screen and it's not really centered. Yeah. So everything just kind of feels random.
Whereas if it were directed in the manner of something like, and I already brought up Monogatari, but like something like that, or even something like No Game, No Life, or something like Kakegurui, is like that you could have the whole just lean into like the sort of the fun, zany kind of stuff that can be visually depicted as a counterpoint to all the dialogue stuff.
Yeah.
But it like, doesn't do that.
Yeah, no. There was a scene... Let me briefly explain what the game is in this episode, because that in of itself is kind of complex. So, in this episode, our protagonist gets challenged to a game again by a guy who is like a puny, self-styled vampire, I think he calls himself. He has
shark teeth and red eyes.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. But he gets challenged to this game where the object of it is there's a bunch of cards labeled, I believe, 1 to 20 that are scattered all over the area, right? Like throughout a large area. And the goal is to find as many of them as you can, and then you select a hand of 5, and at the end of the game, your hand has to beat the other person's hand of 5 cards. Which, in principle, this is not that crazy. But, most of... like, you could do stuff with this. There's, like, this whole aside about, like... at one point, he, like, burns one of the cards so the protagonist can't get it. And then there's another thing where it's offhandedly mentioned that he's got, like, an army of guys that have, like, self-made race cars or something.
Yeah, they stop one of his allies by, like, using their drag racers.
Yeah.
And this is all over the phone. Like, granted,
yeah, no,
that's his army of holy knights.
That's what I was...
They call themselves holy knights,
They do call themselves that. That's what I was gonna get at, is, like, all of this sounds, you know, like it could maybe be entertainingly crazy, but we don't actually see most of it. It's all just, like, this is... Everything I just told you is relayed exactly the same way I'm relaying it to you people listening to this. Just over audio while he's on the phone, and the whole time it's just a shot of him running next to, like, a big concrete wall. It is, like, the most visually dull fucking... It's nothing. It is, like, completely non-functional as a shot. And they hold it for, like, a couple... Like, I want to say, like, a full minute or two.
They go reverse shot with his face.
Yeah,
which
that's all it is. Sillier. It's just, like...
And here's here's the thing, is, like, in a light novel, this could be very, very funny because you can picture it in your head.
Yeah, you're just reading it. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, like a bunch of guys in drag racers like blocked this bus, and it's like, oh no, and then you're just, like, picturing that in your head, and it's like, this is pretty funny. But, like, when you are animating that, you have to animate that for the gag to land, unless you have really good voice acting and good direction of him reacting to it on the phone.
Which neither is
Which they don't do.
Show. Yeah.
They don't do that either. Like, the second best thing, you don't actually show, but the way that the person reacts could be very funny.
Yeah.
They don't do it. And it's, like, it's exasperating because the show is, like, it's like, you know, it's an action comedy thing. It should have
with
stuff happening.
If I could be glib about it, it's an action comedy show with no action and no jokes. Like, it's very it's shockingly dry for how campy it's trying to be.
And there are some moments which would, like, in a better context, be, like, genuinely, like, endearing or funny or just engaging, even dare I say exciting, if they were framed properly, but they're not. It's just very annoying. So it's
what gets me about this is the first episode, which I don't believe you've seen, but I have.
I have not.
The first episode, the first game that we see played is between Hiroto and this redhead who is currently on the YouTube thumbnail if you're watching on YouTube. Sarasa, yeah. And
although she's not actually Sarasa.
That's a whole thing that is just basically completely irrelevant to the show itself because they never do anything with it. It
gets more relevant in the third episode, but, like...
But anyway, like, I'm getting sidetracked.
We'll get into it.
Their game is a staring contest, which sounds like the most boring fucking thing in the world. But that one is actually done with, like, some panache. Like, there's a bit where she's like, okay, I'm gonna pull out my fucking lightsaber that I have for some reason, and she just swings it in front of his face a few times to try to make him blink. And see, like, that's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, like that's the kind of thing that the show should be doing more often, and they have not really gotten back to even that modest height of just like here's like a fairly funny visual gag,
Or
you
or
know.
even like when they are talking about initially introduce the whole fact that oh he has 300 holy knights. They do just like briefly show a shot of that, and
There is
that's
a
like at least.
single still image of them. I mean, it's something, but like,
But it's like compared
yeah,
to what it could be, it's
it
just,
and
and there's so much of
yeah,
that.
there is also like going back to the Bakemonogatari comparison. There is an element of pretense to the show that I don't like
Mm,
because they do this thing where they narrate all of the or animate, sorry, all of the background characters as literal cardboard cutouts, which is like a thing you can do if you're making a show that is like, clever, and this
if
is
you're like
not clever.
if you're like Kunihiko Ikuhara or Akiyuki Shinbo, you can do that. Or like, well, more accurately, Naoyuki Itamura with like the like. There's an arc in like second season of Monogatari where it's Naoko Medusa. Sorry, wrong. Nadeko Medusa, where like there's the whole weird thing with like the way that she perceives other people because she's deeply paranoid, and they're shown as like little outlines that move around.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that like something like
it's
that would be asking too much of this show, but to just
it's
render them as literal
yeah,
cardboard because a different show that you like did it is just kind of like
yeah, like in that case, like with the that arc, it's because it is literally from the perspective of Nadeko, who is losing her mind, is like the whole thing. And then like with something like some of Ikuhara's stuff, it's the same kind of like shrinking sort of
yeah. There,
solipsistic aspect
there
to it.
is
It's
part of
symbolism.
part of me for overusing like the big funny Japanese loan word, but there is like a denpa aspect to that kind of thing,
Oh, 100%.
which is not present in this show at all. I mean, it doesn't need to be, but you need to do something with it if you're gonna do that kind of
Yeah,
thing, and they don't.
yeah.
So it just comes across as like, oh well, Bakemonogatari did it, and it's like, well, you're not
It's
that.
like these are people who have read and watched Dempa things but aren't really engaging with the genre. Like again,
Yeah, which
I that same thing
yeah,
kind of happened with I recently for them anime reviews finally wrote a review of the fucking atrocious Love Flops.
yeah.
Um
Which this
and
show is not as bad as that one, but like,
but that one also engages more with Dempa as a genre than
yeah.
this.
Like I wouldn't
So
say
that's a
that.
whole thing.
To be clear, I would not say that the problem with Liar Liar is that it's not. Like I don't think the problem is that it's not serious enough. It's just
No,
like
not at all.
you can take those influences and do something funny with them. I mean, there's shows like that. There's like Ground Control to Psycho Electric Girl and stuff. There's not a lot of them,
Mm.
but there's a couple. Um, or you can just not do that in the first place if you're not gonna engage with that genre beyond like doing like a funny haha visual gag from it. It's like there is a sense of very like
Like
second-handedness to this show where it just doesn't really feel like it has any ideas of its own.
I do think that in that instance, like maybe there is intention there. It's just that it doesn't land, right?
I mean, I
Is like
guess.
I guess like I think they might be trying to say something about like, you know, but it winds up being more pretentious because you're essentially saying these are the only two relevant characters, except for the people who constantly challenge them, who jump out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Right? It's like like so the solipsism winds up feeling less interesting than a little annoying.
Yeah, it's a very I don't know. Like again, this all goes back to the fact that none of this stuff really seems like it has any intent behind it or any consistency to it. Means that the show in general just kind of feels like stuff is happening more or less at random with no real reason for anything. Like there's this ongoing
Yeah.
plot about like Sarasa is not actually Sarasa. She is
Her name is Rena, I believe.
Rena or something, and there's like she took the actual person's place because they wanted to go to a regular school. But previously, like before this episode, we thought that it was because she had been kidnapped. It's like a whole convoluted thing, and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like her whole specifically, it's like her whole family is like very oppressively strict, sort of wealthy aristocratic family in Japan who want her to only associate with certain people and so on and so forth. And then she's quote unquote kidnapped. But then it turns out that she and her like body double arranged for her to escape this stifling environment and actually go live a normal person's life. And that could be very poignant. And like the way that she like reveals this to the main character when he's like jumped off of like he's landed on a bunch of sandbags dropping 30 feet trying to like get one of the cards and is like really fucked himself up.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I'll keep your secret, you know, like it's like
it's the sort of like, thing. I think I even said this.
It's very sweet. It's just not framed well.
Like
frustrating.
Yeah, I think I literally said when we watched that scene, I was like, in a better show, this would be like kind of sweet, but it's just not anything in this.
It's one. Like it is a good emotional beat that doesn't land particularly well because the directing in that sequence also kind of sucks. It's like I wonder who directed the first episode, right? Like,
I don't know. I didn't look that far. We as people listening to this might be able to guess. We kind of threw this together on a whim. I didn't look that deeply into it.
Like, but I would be interested to see
if it's like a different episode director.
Yeah, if after the show's over, you go back and like see that episode director and those storyboarders, and then compare that to what episodes they worked on versus what other people worked on, and which ones feel the most half-assed.
Yeah, there is like. Again, like, this is not the worst thing airing this season. There is a lot of stuff airing this season that is just
there
unwatchable.
There's, for example, this show has more effort put into it, but is much worse. Is The Girl I Liked Forgot Her Glasses, which has a vision. But it's... I have said this multiple places before, but it is like... That show is... There is no traditional fan service, but it is 100% a fetish show. And I don't know how to deal with that.
That show is insane. Now, comparatively speaking, the only real interesting piece of trivia about this anime, about Liar Liar, is about the ending theme, which is... done by the idol group Smile Princess, which is not a name that will ring bells to most people. But if you've ever seen the absolutely dreadful 2021 slice of life /idol/sports anime Pride of Orange, that is the idol group that was put together for that project. And now they're doing this. It's just like one of the strangest connections between...
Step up.
It is, actually.
Like, that's the shocking thing, is that it's a step up. Is like... One of the fucking worst shows I have ever seen. Like, which is impressive. Like, it's not even, like, nearly the most offensive, although... The fucking
we cannot get into a tangent about Pride of Orange. We'll be here all day.
Oh god. But no, what I'm saying is like it somehow manages to, with the exception of the coach being super fucking creepy, is that show is like there's nothing like offensive about it. It's offensive because there's nothing there.
It's like watching paint dry, dude.
It is like watching paint dry. Jesus Christ. And then it has the gall to end with that fucking see you in the mobile game.
No, we can't talk about that, and we can't talk about the fact that the Pride of Orange mobile game is already no longer active. We cannot talk about the fact that I'm not even sure if any of the people from Smile Princess who were there for the anime are still here for this song. Like, we can't. It's a whole other thing, and I would love to talk about it because the show is awful, but we can't.
There is one thing we can say about Pride of Orange, though, that, like, in terms of people doing a real step up is the director going on to direct fucking Otaku Elf, which was actually
No,
really
Otaku
pretty
Elf
good.
is actually good. If we had been doing this
Yeah.
podcast like a couple months ago, we would have an
Oh
episode
yeah,
about
we would have
Otaku
talked
Elf,
about Otaku Elf because like
and
it's
we'd be like solid.
yeah, it's like it's a very sweet show with like a subtle undercurrent of melancholy despite being
Yeah.
like very lighthearted and pleasant.
If there is a takeaway from this episode of whatever this is, it's don't watch Liar Liar, go watch Otaku Elf.
Yeah, it's like that show is actually like
it's got some actual emotional depth. It's well directed. Looks nice.
Yeah, and just like, and also you get to see an autistic elf geek out about giant robot shows.
Yes,
it's very good.
That is a good show, genuinely. The other thing I will say is like, compared to the anime I have seen that are like offensively nothing.
Oh yeah.
Like Pride of Marriage. Liar Liar is not that bad. Like it's not down there, but it could definitely get there if it continues to be this for 12 straight episodes. Like you're asking a lot of your audience at that point.
Right now it's at a 5 out of 10, but it could go worse.
It could limbo right on down to like a 4, 3, 2, 1. But whatever. Like the thing is, I don't even know if we'll find out because I kind of don't want to watch any more of this. It's just boring.
Yeah. There's a sick part of me that wants to watch more of The Girl Who Forgot Her Glasses because it is just so unhinged.
Bad in an interesting way. Yes.
Like fascinatingly dreadful. But this is significantly less that kind of bad. But also
the word
significantly less compelling.
Yeah, like the word we're looking for, I think, is girl with the glasses is like, in a perverse way, ambitious, whereas this is not.
Yeah, no, this is unambitious, and that's frustrating.
Yeah,
it's like because there's stuff that I like that's unambitious, but it's like when something is unambitious but doesn't have like a whole lot of charm to hold it up, then
you run into issues. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I hate saying this about anime because the one time I said this about an anime in a written article, its second season was announced like a week later. But
yeah, that's
I
show. God, wow.
If we're still doing this by the time the second season of Detective is already dead airs, you better believe your fucking ass that we will be covering that. That show is a train wreck. Anyway, the thing that the
Mecca, the heart transplant.
We can't. We need to talk about this boring show instead. No, it's just like at the end of the day, like my main verdict on Liar Liar after these 3 episodes is like, a year from now I'm not going to remember that this existed, and I don't think anybody else will either.
It's the Revenger effect.
Yeah.
Except
that
like
actually,
Revenger had better animation.
Like I don't even know if I'd agree with that, to be honest.
Like
Revenger, the 2 shows are nothing alike, yet somehow they are kindred spirits. In that,
it's when you look up middling in the dictionary and your eyes just slide off it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some really great shows this year. There's been a couple really bad ones. This is, it's just nothing. Aren't you glad you listened to 30 minutes of us talking about how nothing it is? Subscribe to our...
dog has an opinion on this.
Hell yeah. Subscribe to, like, I don't even know where we're gonna put this. Our Anchor page, I guess, which continues to, like, sometimes just break randomly. Maybe I'll make, like, a YouTube page for just the podcast stuff. I don't know. It'll be up in places. Subscribe
we need to think
it.
We need to think of a funny title for this.
We can do that off microphone.
Oh, of course. But, yeah.
Until next time, whenever next time is.
We may talk. Maybe we can talk about like one of the good shows that's airing next time.
That would be lovely. We could talk about Zom 100 or something.
Zom 100. We could talk about Undead Murder Farce. Bang Dream actually being
Yohane
very
the
good.
Parhelion.
Yeah.
There's... Actually, hold on.
choices.
Okay, stop. One last thing. I'm going to read to you, the listener, a list of anime that are airing right now that are better than Liar Liar, in no particular order. Okay. Level 1 Demon Lord and One Room Hero. Tasteless but kind of funny. Helk. Just sort of weird and interesting, like, comedy fantasy thing. Undead Murder Farce. Actually doing, like, sort of the Monogatari kind of thing where it's, like, very dialogue driven and based on the vibes between the main two characters in, like, a fun and compelling way. Bang Dream, It's My Go. Very melodramatic sort of band anime with a really interesting third episode shot entirely from the perspective of an autistic character. The second season of Jujutsu Kaisen. It's a really good action shonen, and it doesn't need to be anything else but that. Okay, I'm not sure if I can say Reign of the Seven Spellblades is better than this. We're gonna skip that one. Gene of AI, just sort of an interesting, like, thinky, kind of semi-cerebral stuff thing where it's set in the near future. There's, like, a doctor that treats android patients. Kind of an interesting show. Zom 100, like, maybe the best thing that's aired so far this year. I have a whole article written on Zom 100, magicplanetanime.com, go read it. Yohane the Parhelion, weird, like, fantasy idol anime spin-off of the Love Live series. Also, it's kind of turned into Symphogear in the last couple episodes. There's stuff out there that's not this. Go watch one of those.
It's like, yeah. I feel a little bad that I didn't bring up Helk, because that is such an odd yet much more charming show.
It's like fucking leaps and bounds better than this.
Yeah, it's like, I think it tells you something that, like, what's on this level is like the fucking Gohan's Cat show. You know, like, which is significantly better than the aforementioned girl losing her glasses show, but like, this is in the realm of things that are nominally watchable, but you will not remember.
Yeah,
in a few years.
I would just say don't waste your time on this.
Yeah,
basically,
and it is telling that, like, though, like, all the shows that were previously mentioned are good to excellent, or at least, like, decent to excellent.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, there are just as many, if not more, shows that are even worse than Liar Liar.
It says a lot about the state of the medium right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we are in 1984 bubble times.
Yeah. Which, like, even that aside, I mean, I just named, like, what, 6, 7 anime that are still, like, much better than this. So there's no excuse, right?
And you were like, and even you were like, I'm not so sure about Reign of the Seven Spellblades. The Reign of the Seven Spellblades at least has, like, better production values, and
that's true. Reign of the Seven Spellblades looks better than Liar Liar,
and it's doing something, even if we'll figure out what that something is eventually.
Anyway, we need to actually, like, end this at some point. So,
man, yeah.
See you next time. If there is a next time, there probably will be. We'll see you guys around.
Yeah. Bye.